What is the true nature of genius? Is it one perfect flash of light, or a restless curiosity forged in silence by the rhythm of a new industrial age? Is it the power to capture a ghost, to give a permanent voice to a silent machine? Or is it a darker power, born in conflict? A ruthless war fought to own the future itself. This is the story of a man whose ideas became the blueprint for the world we know. A complicated and truly undeniable echoes of genius. Chapter 1. The Genesis. In an age of shadow and flame, a new light was about to be born. Not of fire, but of fierce, unrelenting curiosity. Thomas Alva Edison entered the world, not a prince or a prophet, but the son of a new nation, a nation crackling with change. An illness would soon cloak his world in silence. But this quiet was not an end. It was a beginning, forcing his vision inward. With the world's noise tuned out, his other senses grew sharp. He didn't just see the world. He observed it, dissected it, questioned everything. The family basement became his first real school. Not a cellar of dust and shadow, but a kingdom of chemicals, wires, and pure potential. And in that kingdom, he summoned his first spark. Not just of electricity, but of an idea. A shocking, brilliant idea of what was possible. Outside, the industrial age thundered past. The locomotive wasn't just a machine. It was the roaring pulse of progress, and he felt its rhythm deep in his bones. This was the language of the future, written in clicks and silence. The telegraph, ... The era's nervous system, and he was determined to master it. On the platforms of this new world, he traded in news. But his eyes were always fixed on the source of its transmission. The flow of information itself. The light from the telegraph office was more than illumination. It was a code, a message, beckoning him toward his own destiny. So he taught himself the language of invention, click by click, in the quiet of his room. Every tap was a word. Every pause, a question. He began to see the world in code. Not just dots and dashes, but the hidden patterns of nature waiting to be translated. And on paper, the first ghosts of the future began to appear. A simple drawing, holding the seed of an idea that would one day conquer the night. Failure was never the enemy. It was simply data. Every mistake, every unexpected result was a lesson learned in the harsh language of physics. This chaos was a fertile ecosystem, an environment where wires, chemicals, and impossible questions could connect and create. He looked at the stars not with the eyes of a poet, but of an engineer. A universe of silent, untapped energy, challenging him. He mastered the machine, becoming one of its most skilled operators. But for Edison, mastering a system was only the first step to reinventing it. While others worked, he invented. His first small creations were designed for a simple purpose: to buy him time. The one resource he needed most. Beneath the curiosity was a current of ruthless pragmatism, a willingness to experiment, to push boundaries, whatever the cost. And so he left his small town behind. He wasn't running from a past. He was walking deliberately toward a future he intended to build with his own two hands. He arrived in the heart of the Gilded Age with nothing but the clothes on his back and a mind that saw the world differently. In a city of tycoons and frantic commerce, he was anonymous, a ghost in the machine, looking for a way in. He found shelter in the belly of the beast, the basement of the Gold Indicator Company, sleeping amongst the very machines he yearned to master. By day, he wasn't idle. He studied the stock ticker, the financial heart of the nation, learning its rhythms, its language, and its fatal flaws. And then, that heart stopped. The flow of capital froze. The high-paid engineers were stumped. Panic was the only thing being traded on Wall Street. A complex system is only as strong as its simplest part, a truth that was invisible to everyone, except the young man from the basement. Opportunity does not knock. It arrives in the form of a crisis, waiting for someone with the courage to answer the call. This was his element. In the chaos of gears and wires, surrounded by panic, Edison was finally, completely at home. It wasn't magic, it was observation. The ability to see the simple, elegant point of failure that everyone else had overlooked. With one small fix, the heart of Wall Street began to beat again. In that moment, he wasn't a vagrant. He was a wizard. His reward was a staggering sum. But it wasn't the money that changed him. It was the proof, the absolute proof that a practical idea was the most powerful currency of all. He didn't buy comfort, he bought tools. He invested not in a home, but in a crucible where his flood of new ideas could take physical form. And with his first patent, he staked his claim. It was more than a document. It was a declaration that his thoughts were now property, his innovations a fortress. His thinking began to scale. Why invent one thing when you could build a system for inventing a process? Factory for ideas. He sought out a quiet piece of land in New Jersey. A blank canvas far from the city's noise. A place as silent as his own world. Here, he would build his greatest invention. Not a single device, but a place dedicated to constant, systematic, commercial invention. His vision was an assembly line for the future, bringing together capital, raw materials, and brilliant minds, all orchestrated by his singular will. They would call it the Invention Factory, a place that burned with light and activity 24 hours a day, churning out a new patent every few weeks. He was no longer the lone tinkerer. He was the conductor of an orchestra of innovation, the undisputed wizard of Menlo Park. With his factory built and his army of thinkers assembled, the era of small fixes was over. The era of world-changing invention was about to begin. Chapter 2. The Dawn of Thought and Genius. Menlo Park was not a laboratory. It was a volcano of ideas operating 24 hours a day on the belief that nothing was impossible. And at its center was Edison, a tireless conductor fueled by endless cups of coffee and an insatiable hunger for the next great challenge. But the process was brutal. For every small victory that left the workshop, a mountain of failed, twisted metal was left behind. Then, in the summer of 1877, came an idea so strange, so audacious. It seemed to border on madness, the quest to give a physical memory to a fleeting sound. On paper, the concept was shockingly simple: to etch the vibrations of the human voice directly into matter, to make a machine that could remember. He took the impossible drawing to his master machinist, a man of practical skill who built things that worked, not fantasies from a dream. Creusy famously laughed, betting him it couldn't be done. Edison, ever the showman, accepted the wager. He was betting on a miracle. And so, work began. Metal was shaped, gears were set, following a design that seemed to violate the known laws of science. The result was crude, almost comical. A simple device of tin foil and brass. It held no hint of the magic it was about to perform. With his team gathered around, Edison leaned in and spoke a simple nursery rhyme into the horn. His voice aimed at the machine's diaphragm. A vibrating needle danced to the rhythm of his words, carving what looked like a meaningless scratch into the fragile tinfoil. A hush fell over the room. The laws of physics were clear. A sound once made was lost to the ether forever. But Edison believed otherwise. He reset the needle, and with the fate of his wager hanging in the balance, he turned the crank. Before the sound, there was the sight. The unmistakable collective shock on the faces of men witnessing a law of nature being broken. And then it came. A faint, tinny, but perfect echo of his own voice, spilling from the horn. It was a machine that spoke. A machine with a memory. It was the sound of absolute victory. The sound of a man who had not just invented a device, but had captured a ghost. The lab erupted. This was more than an invention. It was a paradigm shift. They hadn't just heard the future. They had been present at its creation. The world reacted with stunned reverence. This wasn't science. It was sorcery. He was no longer an inventor. He was the Wizard of Menlo Park. The talking machine became an object of global fascination. The world's scientific and financial elite made the pilgrimage to New Jersey to witness the miracle for themselves. But for Edison, the true magic was in the groove itself. He had bottled time, and now he began to wonder. What other impossibilities were waiting to be conquered? At the time, electric light was not a dream. It was a reality. But it was a harsh, untamed beast, a miniature star, too fierce and dangerous to bring into the home. Civilization was still lit by fire, as it had been for millennia. A gentle light, but a dim, flickering, and dying one. Edison's true genius was not in chasing a bulb, but in designing a system. A vast network of generators, wires, and meters to safely deliver light to every room. The project became a financial black hole. Backed by the world's most powerful investors, Edison was waging an expensive war against a problem that many said was unsolvable. The heart of the problem was the filament. The team tested thousands of materials from platinum to exotic plant sage, one burning out, a testament to failure. The work was a war of attrition, a relentless cycle of trial and error that pushed the team to the limits of human endurance. Edison knew the filament wasn't the only enemy. It was the air itself. To survive, his light would have to burn in a near-perfect vacuum, a bubble of nothingness. After testing the rarest materials on Earth, the solution came from the humblest of places, a simple piece of carbonized cotton sewing thread. It was fragile as a dream. A filament representing thousands of hours of failure, now resting on the brink of an historic success. With the air evacuated, the stage was set. A single bulb against the accumulated wisdom of all prior science. A final test. He gently applied the current, not a torrent of power, but a delicate whisper of electricity, coaxing the filament to life. And then it happened. Not a blinding flash, but a soft, warm, and constant glow. A completely new kind of light, stable and reassuring. It held, it didn't break. It simply burned, a tiny captured star, a defiant jewel of light against the oppressive darkness. The minutes turned into hours. The team watched in silence as the fragile thread continued to burn, long past any previous record, long into the night. This was not the wild joy of the phonograph. This was the profound, quiet satisfaction of men who knew they had finally solved an impossible problem. After more than 13 hours, he knew. He hadn't just invented a better light, it made the darkness itself obsolete. Immediately, the laboratory became a factory. The miracle was systematized, ready to be scaled and sold to the world. To prove his vision, he invited the world to his doorstep on New Year's Eve, 1879, for a public demonstration of his new reality. With the press and the public gathered in the cold winter night, Edison, the ultimate showman, stood ready to unveil the modern age. In an instant, the night vanished. He had illuminated not just a laboratory, but a new path for humanity. The age of fire was over. The age of light had officially begun. Chapter 3. The peak of contribution and conflict. The invention of the light bulb was one thing. Powering a city was another. It was a brutal Herculean task of digging trenches and laying miles of thick copper arteries. And at the center of it all, Edison had transformed. He was no longer just an inventor. He was a general, commanding an army in his bid to conquer Manhattan. But his direct current system had a fatal weakness. Like a tether, it could only transmit power about a mile before fading into nothingness. To light this single square mile, Edison needed a behemoth, a custom-built generator of unprecedented scale, the iron heart of his new electrical world. On September 4th, 1882, history was made. The system worked. The age of commercial electric light had dawned, starting from a single street in New York City. But as Edison built his empire, a different kind of genius arrived on American shores. A Serbian immigrant with a mind that saw a different future for electricity. Nikola Tesla proposed a radical alternative, alternating current, or AC, a system that, through the use of transformers, could send immense power over hundreds of miles. Edison, the master of DC, refused to listen. To him, AC was a dangerous, impractical fantasy, a threat to the purity of his creation. Their partnership was severed by a broken promise over a financial bonus, a single moment of arrogance that would unleash Edison's greatest adversary. The visionary was cast out. Forced to dig ditches for $2 a day, his mind tortured by brilliant ideas the world was not yet ready to hear. But in the darkness, Tesla's genius found its own light. He demonstrated the true magic of AC, wireless power, an achievement so profound it bordered on sorcery. This sorcery caught the attention of industrialist George Westinghouse. He saw what Edison refused to see, that the future of electricity was not in limitation, but in reach. The alliance was forged. Tesla's visionary science backed by Westinghouse's industrial might. The stage was now set for a war. It was a war of competing systems. Edison's safe, short-range DC against Westinghouse and Tesla's efficient, far-reaching AC. The prize was not just a city. It was the right to power a nation. It's the right to build the infrastructure of the 20th century. Edison, facing a technologically superior system, felt his empire under siege. He chose to fight, not with innovation, but with fear. He began a ruthless propaganda campaign, publicly electrocuting stray animals with a seed to prove its supposed dangers to a horrified public. The press became his weapon. He worked to paint Westinghouse's alternating current, not as a competitor, but as a killer current. The campaign reached its ghoulish climax when Edison's associates secretly promoted AC to power the world's first electric chair, forever linking their rivals' technology with death. The War of the Currents had begun in earnest. It was no longer a battle of physics, but a brutal fight for the soul of the modern world. To celebrate the 400th anniversary of its discovery, America planned a party unlike any other. The 1893 Chicago World's Fair, a white city to showcase the nation's genius. And the contract to illuminate this city became the ultimate prize, the final public battleground in the brutal War of the Currents. Edison's company, now a corporate giant called General Electric, submitted a confident, high-cost bid to power the fair with their trusted direct current. In a stunning move, Westinghouse, betting his entire company on AC, submitted a bid for nearly half the price. It was an all-or-nothing gamble. The committee chose the cheaper, more efficient system. Alternating current had won the contract. It was a massive public victory for Westinghouse and Tesla. For Edison, the loss was a humiliating public defeat. His response would not be that of an inventor, but of a wounded industrialist. In a final spiteful act, he sued Westinghouse, legally barring them from using his patented light bulb design. If he couldn't light the fair, he would make sure no one could. The move was devastating. Westinghouse had won the contract of the century, but now possessed no legal way to produce light. Forced into an impossible corner, Westinghouse and Tesla had to innovate their way out, designing and mass-producing an entirely new light bulb in less than a year. The result was the stopper lamp, a new design that cleverly circumvented Edison's patents. It was a triumph of engineering, born from sheer desperation. With their new bulb in hand, they raced against time, installing a power system of unprecedented scale and complexity, ready for the world stage. By day, the White City was a marble marvel, but its true purpose, its great test, would only be revealed after the sun went down. As darkness fell, 250,000 people held their breath, gathered in the cold, waiting to see if the promise of a city of light was real. At the touch of a golden key by the President of the United States, the command was sent across the fairgrounds. And in a single, silent, magnificent instant, night was vanquished. 100,000 points of light ignited, outlining the city in a blaze of electric glory. This was more than a light show. It was a vision of the 20th century, a clean, safe, brightly lit future, all powered by the genius of Tesla and the audacity of Westinghouse. The public had seen the future with their own eyes. The war of the currents was over, decided not in a lab or a courtroom, but in the hearts and minds of the people. The final prize remained, the monumental task of harnessing the very power of Niagara Falls, a feat only possible with long-distance AC. After Chicago, the choice was obvious. The contract was awarded to Westinghouse, cementing alternating current as the undisputed power source of the modern world. Edison, the man, had lost the war. But the powerful company he built, General Electric, would survive and thrive by finally embracing the very technology he had fought so hard to destroy. Chapter 4: Legacy and Immortality. Though the war of the currents was over, Edison's war on the impossible was not. At his new, larger laboratory in West Orange, the invention continued. His next great obsession was not merely capturing sound, but capturing life itself, the illusion of motion preserved on a strip of celluloid. His kinetoscope offered the world its first moving pictures, a private, personal magic delivered one spectator at a time. It was a humble, flickering beginning. But in these simple images of a sneeze or a strong man, the seeds of a new global art form, the cinema, were sown. He built the world's first film studio, the Black Maria, a strange, tar paper shack that rotated on a track, forever chasing the sun's essential light. In his later years, he became a living American icon, a friend and equal to the other titans who had forged the modern age. Like automobile magnate Henry Ford, together, these men who had built the industrial world would often escape it, seeking a quiet refuge in nature, perhaps nostalgic for the simpler America they had replaced. But Edison never truly stopped. Even in old age, he was relentlessly experimenting, driven by a deep-seated need to solve the next problem, to find the next breakthrough. He was acutely aware that his greatest invention, more time, was beyond his grasp. "I am long on ideas," he famously said, "but short on time." The relentless force of nature who had moved the world with his energy was finally brought to a stop, his mind still racing as his body failed him. His death was treated as a national event, a moment of history so significant that his last breath was mythically captured in a test tube, a final artifact of a legendary life. On October 18, 1931, the news went out across the airwaves. The wizard was gone. The brightest light of the modern age had been extinguished. In an unprecedented tribute, the nation honored him in the very language he had helped create. The dazzling lights of Broadway went dark. And across the country, millions of Americans switched off their lights for 1 minute, returning to the darkness to remember the man who had given them the gift of light. A few seconds of complete silence and blackness. But his light could never truly be extinguished. It was now woven into the very fabric of the world. His humble bulb became the canvas for our grandest spectacles and our most vibrant cities. His flickering pictures became the way humanity tells its most important stories, and his talking machine evolved into the soundtrack that fills every moment of our modern lives. Thomas Edison didn't just invent things, he invented the framework for the 20th century, an echo of genius that surrounds us still in every wire, every song, and every ray of man-made light.